Evan.
Hi, I'm Bobby Halton, Editor-in-Chief of Fire Engineering Magazine and Education Director for FDIC, and welcome to today's Humpday Hangout. I'm joined as always by my co-host, Erich Roden, who is the Editor-in-Chief of FireRescue Magazine and also a tremendous supporter of FDIC's on our Executive Advisory Board. We've got a special guest on today's Humpday Hangout, and I'll introduce him in a minute, but we're also being joined today by Frank Lipsky, Nick Martin, uh, um, uh, I'm blanking, Dougie Cline, Jason Hoevelmann, and Ricky Riley from Traditions Training. So we've got a great group of guys. Sorry for the senior moment there, but I am the oldest guy on the Hangout, so I can say that. So we got a great group hanging out. We're going to be talking about training, and we're going to be talking about tactics. So tactics and training is today's topic. So welcome to the Hangout. I want to introduce our special guest, who's a guy who actually knows a great deal about the fire service because of his association with us through Honeywell Corporation. Honeywell Corporation's huge in the fire service, whether it's the Honeywell systems that we all know about, and you can see on the wall behind me there's a Gamewell system. Well, Honeywell owns Gamewell, so that's an older Honeywell Gamewell system, and nowadays they're much more technique, but that tradition of excellence and all of that still exists in Honeywell today. Honeywell also supplies us with some of the best structural gear in the world. You know, we all talk about Morning Pride gear, which is an iconic brand in the fire service. Honeywell owns that particular brand. So if you're looking for Viper or Edge or their any of their gear, they've got it. Harness systems, whether it's EMS gear, wildland gear, you're looking for a new set of BDUs, Honeywell has them. Gloves, helmets, it's all right there at Honeywell. So go to Honeywell.com, go to Honeywell Fire, it'll take you right to the site, see all the great stuff you can get from Honeywell. Everything you need to get yourself equipped is right there at Honeywell, and everything you want to learn about fire systems, Honeywell are the people who do it. And Honeywell is also a tremendous supporter of education and training. They're huge in Fire Engineering Magazine. They're huge in FireRescue Magazine. You might not see the Honeywell name because it's a different brand. It's their gloves, it's their hoods, it's their BDUs, it's their harnesses, it's their the other equipment that they sell, their systems. But that's Honeywell, and they've made such a tremendous commitment to training and to the fire service, not only through FDIC, but the Wash the Hood program, supported by Honeywell. Firefighter Cancer Support Network that I'm on the board of directors of and I've been proud to be associated with since its inception. Honeywell, huge support of the Firefighter Cancer Support Network, which is one of the largest threats to firefighters today. But this year, and I got to bring my buddy Jeff in, this is Jeff Morris, he's the president of Honeywell Fire, to show you how deeply committed they are. This isn't some guy who is an ad man or a sales guy. This is the president of Honeywell Fire. This is a very important guy. Day before Thanksgiving, hanging out with us to tell you about a special scholarship program that you can nominate somebody to go to FDIC for free, right, Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. Great plug, and I really appreciate it. We're excited here at Honeywell. A lot of this comes down to giving back to the customers that we provide great products to, and I think you highlighted a number of the products that we provide the fire service. But it's great to see something come to life. As you spoke earlier, we talked about this over breakfast one day. Say, hey, how can we give back to the fire service? One of the key elements, and today's a great topic, is training. We can't train enough. I look at our own workforce and training as a critical element that we do. We felt that something was needed to enhance our position and enhance training in the fire service. There's a number of people today in the fire service that are not able to attend the FDIC for whatever reasons. And we know that still many cities are challenged economically. Budgets aren't as robust. The federal grant monies aren't as strong as they used to be. So we've said, hey, let's put together a program, and in conjunction, I can't not mention Underwriters Laboratories. UL is partnered with us. You can thank Steve and his team at UL. Again, big in training, big in education. So we've partnered together with UL to offer the first time ever 25 full ride scholarships. And when we say full ride, we're talking room and board, airfare. If some people are going to drive, we'll make sure that they get there. And in addition to that, we pay for all the classrooms and also access to the trade show. We just feel it's critical that education. We cannot educate the fire service enough. I mean, we make great products, but 9 out of 10 times, too often, we know it's not the products that fail, it's something else that fails, and usually it's a lack of training or a lack of execution. And so we feel the more training we can provide, it will enhance our position in giving back to the fire service. So we're excited. This will be the first year, and it's pretty simple. All we're asking is a quick video. The video will be sent in. We'll review those videos. We've got a nice board set up. We've got Gary Breeze. We've got Ron Sarnicki, Steve Gerber, and some Honeywell representatives that will be reviewing these videos. And then from there in February, we'll be selecting 25 people. So extremely excited, and we look forward to this. And again, we hope to build on this and even add more to it as time comes in the future. So really appreciate the opportunity here on Hump Day on the eve of Thanksgiving. A lot to be thankful for to move forward. So I appreciate the time today.
Well, we're thankful to Honeywell for sponsoring this and for sponsoring everything else that you sponsor for us and helping the fire service. And if you want to ask Jeff a question or any of the other panelists we've got on today in the Hangout, just send me hashtag FETalk on Twitter, and we'll get your questions on, and you can ask any question you want. So let's get to talking about training and in particular some of the obstacles and some of the reasons. And obstacles are often part and parcel of the reasons, but we're going to talk about, I want to ask our panelists today, what are you training on right now? Why did you pick that particular topic, or what are you focusing on, or what are you promoting as your primary training right now within your organization? And I'll start off with my partner, Erich. What are you doing up in Milwaukee right now that you guys are focusing on primarily for company training this month?
First off, thank you everyone for joining us today, and again, a special thanks to Jeff for the scholarship. For those that have been to FDIC, they understand that it is a financial commitment. It is time off from work, but to get a full ride is just an amazing gift to get. So again, we're very appreciative of everything Honeywell and you all are doing. As for what we're doing locally here. Obviously in Milwaukee it's very cold this time of year. It's actually cold everywhere lately. But we're training on cold weather operations, and I'll tell you what, it kind of come at a better time. This week I've worked quite a lot, and I actually had one greater alarm and a fire at the same scrapyard all in the course of a week. And I'll tell you what, we suffered the issues with frozen hydrants, freezing hose lines, frozen valves on rigs, and being prepared for cold weather operations is no joke. I mean, we're expected to perform whether it's 90 degrees or minus 10 degrees. So being ready is everything. So we're really pushing our annual cold weather operations training, and we've been very successful where we haven't seen any of the issues that we see at a lot of places in the country with cold weather. So that's really what we've been up to up here in Milwaukee.
Frank, what are you doing with the engine company training and your organization? What are you guys looking at, or gals? What are you looking at this month and the next few months? And why did you pick that particular training piece?
Yeah, thank you, Bobby, for having me. I appreciate the time to come on and talk with everybody. I hate to start with this, but those of you that don't know, here in St. Louis, we're right next to Ferguson, so we run with those. That's our brothers and sisters just to the south. So that's kind of derailed the training, and we're focusing on that. But in addition to that, prior to the civil unrest going on, we have a countywide situation with 42 different departments in our area, and they've come up with countywide structure fire SOG. So as the initial steps on that from our department, from a Florissant standpoint, we've been able to start doing some individual skills as companies and as our department in preparation for the regional training that will take place in the warmer weather. For those countywide SOGs. But again, as I mentioned, right now, training in our region is kind of derailed until we get through this. So wishing the best for our brothers and sisters there in Ferguson.
Did you guys engage in any special training for that, or did you have any, did you do anything in particular with the law enforcement or National Guard or anything? Did you do anything different that you're doing with your rigs or that you can talk about?
Yeah, with regard to Ferguson, with those events.
Yeah.
Yeah. obviously there's a lot of different tactical decisions that they're trying to make. One of the biggest things is just that on the scenes, police are only going to be able to secure a scene for a short period of time, and so we have a very short window where we're basically going to use our tank water, put it on the fire, and try to knock that down as much as we can. Our normal tactics of laying a supply line, having multiple hand lines off just isn't feasible. So we went to a lot of quick line setups, deck gun setups, and we've had to train on that to get our crews up to speed on, everybody has a job, the engineer has a job, the driver has a job. And one thing that we're doing, running four-person crews during this incident, is our driver actually stays in the vehicle, and we have another trained driver who gets out and does the pump panel. That way, in an event that we have to get out of that situation for crew safety, we have our driver ready to go. We throw the stuff on. So that's been kind of unique. Along with Jason, we've been training on those types of things, unfortunately, to keep our crews safe.
Wow. Well, next up will be be Nick Martin. And Nick, always, you talk about a guy that's into training. Anytime I talk to Nick, he's either coming back from doing training somewhere or he's doing specialized training at his department. Eats, sleeps, drinks, training. So, Nick, what are you focused on right now? What are you looking at? What do you think the fire service needs, and what are you working on, either with traditions training or with your organization, or both?
Yeah, it's been kind of all over the map. I mean, like Erich was saying, it's getting cold weather here. We had to work on the long sleeves and rolling the windows up. It did get into the 50s last week, so I'm sure you can all feel for us. But no, I mean, for real, I guess on the at work here in Columbia, one thing we've been working on a lot has been pump operations. We got a whole group of firefighters who are getting ready to promote to our senior firefighter rank, which is the first rank where they can drive. And there's been a lot of focus on making sure that they're capable as far as all the pumping stuff goes on. And in our multi-unit drills program, we kind of took a little bit of a back to basics approach this fall. Which honestly sometimes I kind of roll my eyes about when people say like back to basics and stuff like that. But what we were doing is we did PPE inspections where my training staff kind of facilitated inspecting the members' PPE, and we did some other random stuff like run them through a pretty standard maze that we have pre-constructed at the training academy, and it's turned out to be a very valuable set of basic drills that we've done. I mean, some of these guys go to fires every day, but haven't gone through even the simplest maze in years. And it's been a good refresher for a lot of people, and it's brought out some issues that needed addressed and things like that. And then we've had a continuing focus for about the past year and a half or so on command level practices, particularly for our chief officers and acting chief officers. We kind of use the blue card system as a model. We modify that a little bit to meet our operations and everything, but we've been doing our weekly chief sessions have been focusing continuously on the roles of the different levels of chiefs at an incident, and a lot on incident simulations. And one of my guys has been spending about 3 weeks per simulation to build these very, very intricate fire studio simulations that I'm really proud of. I mean, if you're in the battalion car, honestly, it doesn't look that impressive, but if you're like engine 1 or ladder 1, it's got views inside, and it's almost like a video game where he's got it set up where you can choose to go different directions, or a split view for the inside team and the outside team, and stuff like that. And then I guess, and I'm sure Ricky will chime in on this too, but on the tradition side of things, I mean, the combat ready thing is always pretty hot, and I'll let Ricky speak more about that, but I know that him and I are very proud that continues to be a top thing, because it's all about attitude, and attitude about how we approach the job pretty much influences everything else, regardless of what the topic is. So, that's been a great opportunity to keep talking about. And a couple other things we've been talking about earlier, myself and a few guys were in Pennsylvania earlier, and these guys asked specifically for us to focus on engine and ladder company operations for very minimal staffing. And it was a class that made a lot of sense based on what departments are dealing with these days, and it kind of challenged us a little bit to talk about what we usually talk about and do what we normally do, but focus it on 2-person engine companies and one guy arriving in his car 5 minutes later and that kind of thing. So it was a good eye-opener and a refresher.
Well, and because we're hanging out, so please feel free to jump in. anybody else. But boy, Nick, you said so many important things there. I picked out the top three that you said that I'd just like to make comments on. I think what you're doing with Blue Card is excellent. When I came up with the idea for Blue Card, it wasn't a national program; it was a local idea. And my idea with Blue Card, when I first presented it to Chief Brunassini, and him and his sons have taken it to great places. If you haven't participated, I highly encourage that you do. I think it's a great curricula. But the idea was kind of exactly what Nick just talked about. The initial idea was to do kind of local, and then have all the supporting departments, like Frank just talked about, supporting the folks in Ferguson. So like have St. Louis be the hub, and then create their own certification program kind of locally. John and Nikki and Chief Brunassini have done a great job taking it to a national level. But my original idea, when I came up with the idea, because I was resource depleted at a major fire I had in Albuquerque, and I needed help from other departments within the state, but I didn't know what their levels of training and capability were. So I think it's a great way to modify Blue Card, is to regionalize it and bring it in and make sure that locally you've got everybody kind of doing the same deal. But you also mentioned something that, and it's kind of cool that we have Jeff with us, is that you did the PPE inspection. I wonder how many organizations, we're going to throw that out to the group, how many organizations are doing good PPE inspections? Because if you look at the NFPA standards now, there's an actual way to do your PPE inspection. We did some training on it on fire engineering, but you really need to inspect that gear quarterly. I think at least quarterly, for tears, abrasions, wear. Even if it's clean enough. Talk a little bit about that, and why did you start doing that, and then maybe Jeff, you could chime in, and does Morning Pride and Honeywell supply any kind of instruction or training in that regard?
Well, I was looking over my shoulder to see if I had the form on my desk that one of my captains designed, but I can tell you it's legal sized. It's not regular letter sized. And to be quite frank and honest, I mean, I don't think there was. I've been in Columbia for almost 2 years, and this was the first time that gear inspection came up. And it probably is on the books that it's supposed to happen another way, another time. But like many things in many departments, that falls away. I worked in another major fire department that others may or may not know which it is prior to coming here, and I never had my gear inspected. And I can say that by simply just having an organized inspection, which for the 20 guys that we have down in a multi-unit drill rotation at a time and a couple instructors, it takes like a half an hour. It's not only found multiple cases where the guy needed to leave the training and go right to logistics and get a new coat or whatever because there was imminent failure, but it's also educated the guys on the field in the field, what they need to be looking for, why they need to be looking for, so that it's not just something that is cast off on one or two guys in a big department to look at once or twice a year, but it's something that everybody now has a basic level of education about, and they can take a look at every shift or after every fire or whatever.
So, hey, Bobby, this is kind of an interesting topic. Wasn't planning on speaking to this today, but we hear from the fire service, and we understand there's a lack of tools on it. It's kind of funny to hear you say you have a large piece of paper to do it. We've actually are working on what we call Project First. Project First is a new application. It'll be a web-based, and it'll also be an app-based that you could take an iPad or a tablet, an iPhone, and allow you to scan the barcode in your gear. It will give you kind of a green, yellow, red light system. We've used it already at a number of large fire departments, City of Los Angeles. We've used it Virginia Beach. And so we're beginning to deploy it right now. So I would encourage anyone in the fire service. Again, it's called Project First. It's an application that follows the guidelines of NFPA. It gives you the tools and the resources to take all your gear, inventory it, be able to understand what is needed to be repaired, what gear is out of service, what gear needs to be taken out of service, when is the life cycle of your gear. So it's a very extensive program, and it's going to be an evolutionary launch in 2015 for us. So we're excited about it. And again, it's really from what we're hearing here on this conversation that we developed this program. So it's called, again, Project First, and be more than happy to talk to anyone more about that and get the right people from our organization involved. And Chief, I think it'll be something we could share with you. It sounds like you're in the midst of it down there in South Carolina, that we could have someone give you the tool and you can take a look at it.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Doug. This is one of the things that we're doing, and we've actually pushed it to a monthly level as well for the company officers to look at it, because they're, when you have 40 stations, it's hard to get around, and even pulling them into training on a quarterly basis when you're running a lot of fires or a lot of jobs. Officers are looking at it because they're responsible for protecting the people. And I like that app. I like being able to track it, because as an OSHA state, that's one of the requirements. And living through the High Point experience, that was a big thing that came out, and that's one of the things they're looking for when they come in adoption of that.
Wow. Okay, hey Ricky, let's why don't you jump in here? Also, this is Ricky Riley, Clearwater, Florida Chief, but also the president, I think, if I'm not mistaken, of Traditions Training, one of the greatest training groups out there, and great friends of fire engineering, great friends of FDIC, and now I'll get 10 other training groups will shoot me angry notes, including Jason.
I was going to say, I saw Jason starting to type right away.
Jason's already sending me a nasty note.
Well, Archer, we've been doing a lot of jet ski training this month, so it's been pretty rough. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. But ours is, if you'll notice, Nick and I have the same training plan. I don't know which one of us came up with it first, but we just finished incident simulations using a blue card and with our lieutenants. And then we also are just getting ready to start our SCBA confidence courses. So still there? Okay.
Yeah. Both of you brought up the blue card. I mean, what a brilliant idea, if I don't mind saying so myself. But I mean, why did you choose that as a focal point for your training right now? Why is that so critical?
It's for us. It's that time of year. It's our last quarterly officer training meeting of the year, and we're going to start We've started incident simulations in December, or we did it in November this year. But we've got blue card. I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, after a May Day that we had, and some of the chief officers' credentials were called into play, and we needed a structured plan and a certification, continuing education. But with Nick, we took all of the Bruncini simulations and kind of just put them on a shelf, and then we created our own with our own buildings, following our own standard operating procedures, but using the 8 functions of command and a checklist that takes all their stuff and then adds all of the Clearwater and Pinellas County stuff in there. And we, like you were just talking about with Albuquerque, we do the training for the whole county in blue card. So if we run an incident, pretty much every jurisdiction has sent the group of chiefs through the blue card command center. So.
And that was the whole idea. And God bless Nick and Johnny and Chief B for putting together the curriculum, because it needed a curriculum. It's a great concept, but it's the curriculum that is the glue that makes it work. And the blue card curriculum is second to none.
But hey, do you mind if when we talk about the stuff that Tradition's doing?
Yeah, please.
I would say that we've been doing a lot of company officer stuff, and the segment, the most interactive segment that we do with company officer that Chief Schultz and I do is tactics. And the biggest thing they constantly bring up is slicers, dicers, hitting it hard from the yard, whatever that is. And that is the most interactive session that we have. And I think, whatever we're getting ready to put together with all this science, I just sat on a round table with Dan Mazurowski, or Dan Albuquerque, because I can't pronounce his name either. Is that somebody asked, what is the tradition in the fire service? And I said, well, Dan can't talk about that because he's ruining it. He's ruining the tradition. But we have to know what's going on with Dan and Steve, because if we're not, man, we're just going to fail quickly on fire grounds, and we're going to fail in a national way if we're not listening to what they're saying and adjusting tactics. But like I said, times before, is that I'm not throwing away 30 years of my experience and putting the R down at the bottom. When we're there to do R is the first for me, doing that rescue. So taking all those pieces together, and that's what our students at Traditions, they want to hear about and they want to talk about a lot. So
that's a great quick segue there. If you come to FDIC this year, if you're thinking about it, UL and NIST and Honeywell are actually putting on 2 days of live fire experiments, just like the experiments that we did in Milwaukee, that we did in Toledo, that we did in Chicago, that we've done at Northbrook. We're getting 2 buildings, required structures, and NIST and UL and Honeywell are going to set them up with all the instrumentation, just like a real experiment. We're going to take 4 hypotheses. We're going to check those hypotheses against real context, real conditions, and then in the afternoon, we're going to come back and evaluate that data with, George Healy and Derek O'Connor and Steve Kerber and Majikowski and all the folks like Erich Roden and myself and people who are participating on the panels. We've got a whole cadre of those folks. We're going to come back and then do that evaluation as a group together and then talk about, well, what does that mean tactically, locally for you? What does that mean tactically for this particular tactic that you might want to modify or change? So, yeah, great. Thank you for that, for doing that, Ricky. And I think that people do want to know.
Just as long as your NIST thing doesn't coincide with 25 to survivor red flags, then we're good. I mean, put that on a different day. So.
Well, no, the NIST thing is Monday and Tuesday. It's 8 hours, so you can take it on Monday or Tuesday, and then you can still attend red flags, and you can still attend.
That's Monday and Tuesday. How am I going to beat Steve and Dan?
No, they could take your class on Tuesday, and they take that class on Monday, or they could take your class on Monday and that class on Tuesday.
Yeah, you can't beat Steve and Dan, right? It's.
Hey, come on. I've actually turned down proposals from both of them, and they can tell you that. I actually had Brunacini and I actually put in a class this year for FDIC, and we got turned down.
Oh, come on, Erich, is that true?
That's absolutely. Erich, back me up, brother. It's absolutely true. Bruno and I put in for a class called The Fog of the Fireground, talking about mental aspects of performance on the fireground, and we got turned down. So when people say they didn't get picked up for FDIC, I know how you felt.
I'm throwing the flag on that one.
I call Bruno. I swear to God.
I just want to delete.
What's that?
I said we just skipped right past that. Yeah, keep going.
Hey, come on. Hey, listen. Let's bring in Jason real quick. And Jason, we know our hearts go out to you. We know you're exhausted from the last couple nights handling the Ferguson deal. You neighbor Ferguson, and I know you were there. And we're very honored that you could join with us today. And Jason also works with Frank, and they run engine company training, and they do a great engine house training.
Engine house. And
they do great programs all across the country. And so what are you seeing out there, Jason, for your guys? And talk a little bit about what you're going to be doing at FDIC.
Hey, Bobby, can I interrupt real quick?
Sure.
Sorry, Jason's too humble to tell you this, but I'll go ahead and put it out here now. We congratulate Jason. He just got promoted to battalion chief with our organization.
Oh, hey! There you go.
Thanks. Just to kind of real quickly what Florison's doing that Frank didn't touch on that's kind of new, but it dovetails into what Ricky and Nick were talking about is we're fortunate enough to be getting we've got a really good chief that's just recently been promoted within the last 12 months, and we've always needed a company officer development program, and we've not had one, and we've been really hitting that really hard. And we've tied it into the tactics that Ricky was talking about and the NIST and UL things, along with the leadership. We haven't got into the blue card part of things yet. I'm not real sure where the command training is going to go for the chief, but it's been pretty exciting for us to see that company officer development, and it's paid off. We've seen improvements in that aspect already in a short time that it's been implemented. As far as in-house training, we've been honored to be able to teach for the last 5 years in multiple locations. And quite honestly, the 2 biggest classes we get requests for are the engine company operations classes. I mean, just the simple things like moving hose lines with different numbers of people and fire attack. And then the second one is the bailout, which we've been honored and appreciative enough to be able to teach a hot class this year at FDIC. And we're more fundamental, basic guys too in regards to we want to put the fire out and avoid having to jump out a window. But what we saw happening in our region was a lot of fire departments were buying the harnesses and the kits, and obviously they can't send everybody to FDIC in the past years, and so we tried to take it upon ourselves to get trained and get certified and learn about all these systems, and we started doing the training for singular departments, which rolled over into our company, and it's a very popular class that we teach. And We use a lot of the examples from FDNY and the instances that they had and throughout the country, because it's not just a high-rise issue, but also we reinforce the fact that you have to have good basic fundamental firefighting skills to avoid that. That is a last-ditch effort, and we don't use a lot on the remote anchors, because if something happens, most of the time, what we've talked to Eugene Stolowski and some other folks, that it's not always a lot of time to get a remote anchor, so we really hit hard on get set, get out. If something does happen. And we want to thank Penwell and Fire Engineering and Bobby and Erich for allowing us that opportunity at FDIC.
And again, and this is, I'm not kidding around here, the UL class, Jason's class, they're going to sell out, and they're filling up fast. So, you can always, if you pay for a FDIC and you win a Honeywell scholarship, we'll let you use the money next year. We'll get you your money back. Just if you win a scholarship, don't worry about, I might win the scholarship. If you wait too long on these hands-on training classes, they sell out. Jason, I think you only have 55 students in your class?
We're at 55, and it's going to move quick. They're 4-hour sessions, so they're going to go fast.
You're already, I think you're pretty full on one day already. So if you're serious about FDIC, and Doug's been coming for 10 years, he can back me up, and Erich's been teaching Urban Essentials. Urban Essentials is another class. It's going to fill up. Make sure you register early. So this brings us to Doug, and Doug is the former president of the International Association of Fire Service Instructors. Great group of people. If you're not a member of the International Association of Fire Service Instructors, I absolutely recommend you become a member. You get a 10% discount on FDIC, which more than pays for what it costs to be a member each year. So please become a member of the International Association of Fire Service Instructors. Doug, talk a little bit about what the Instructor Society decided to focus on with the fire behavior class, and then let's get into some of the tactics.
Well, what they did is they put together everything that's in the science and the research that's occurred over probably the last 10 years. And what they've done is they've taken all this and broken it down to what I call the firefighter level. And what that means is it's understandable. And, Rick was talking about it, what we've done for years. This is 35 years for me, and rescue's always been one of the #1 pieces. So with an acronym, part of what we've seen in slicers is rescue and salvage are opportunistic, tactics that you can throw in there, or windows of opportunity. And we know during size up, part of what happens is you recognize the need for rescue or the opportunity for rescue, and that's where you begin implementing this. And I know that there's a lot of stuff that Nick and Rick and Jason and those guys have been doing when they're out doing training with FlowPass. So part of, we're doing all the research about FlowPass, taking the research about how fire is dynamic and the dynamics of fire and the fire attack, and putting it all together and relating that to what the United States Fire Service and the Canadian Fire Service and across the world, what they're faced up against, and breaking it down to where it's understandable and going through about an 8-hour day. The good part of it is it's a grant. We've got to do 100 of those across the United States, which is going to be really cool. We're working with the state fire training directors to get those set up, and we're looking forward to being out there. It's going to be a really dynamic program. There's a lot of folks that worked on it. I know that Eddie B. worked on it, Eddie Buchanan, Dan Matrikowski, Steve Kerber, Brian Kazmerzak. There's a lot of folks, that have been right in the middle of that, Kevin Milan. All the folks that are associated to being at FDIC and that have put a lot of effort and time in over the last 10 years to make the fire service great. And it's going to trickle down to what everybody else is doing and making it applicable to your organization. One of the key things in there is they talk about what it's not telling you to do. And one of the first lines in that slide is like, we're not telling you not to go in. We're telling you to do a good size up, be able to hit the fire and control the environment from an area that is, tenable and safe, or to make that area tenable and safe so that you can get in there, so that you can effect rescue. And we know that quick application of water changes those dynamics to give us the a better chance of effecting rescues, which we're all about, and that's what we really want to see done, and be able to make it safer for us to do it.
Yeah, and I think that we'll get into some of the parts of that acronym in a minute here and talk tactics, especially with Erich and Nikki and Rick, and then I think that Frank and Jason also give us some of the local stuff. Remember, when we're talking about some of the stuff that we're talking about here with these acronyms, is that when you're operating downrange, as you'd say in the military, and you're operating in context, downrange, in other words, in a dynamic environment, you got to have multiple tactics. You got to have multiple game plans that you can play. You can't bring one playbook and expect that play to play out for you at every single fire. So Slicers is an acronym to help you understand some of the dynamics of the situation, but it encompasses hundreds of different tactical approaches. So other than size up, I'd like to talk a little bit about isolation and what we talk about with Slicers. When we talk about isolating the flow path, how are you training on that? Jason, you talked about it, and Ricky, you talked about it. What are you training people on in terms of ventilation? And I want to hit on two topics. One is obviously the residential side of it, which is great, and then let's also talk. But not everything we go to is residential. Let's face it. There's a lot of jobs, there's a lot of places that get a fair amount of commercial work, and so how are we working it residentially, and then how are we looking at it in a general form on our standard commercials, whether a standalone commercial or a strip or or a low rise?
Well, from our perspective, we've gradually been training on the new science. We've not completely overhauled our SOGs at this point, but we have implemented certain tactics at certain times and given mostly the officers that critical thinking tool to make decisions based on what they're encountering. We've had situations where officers, more seasoned veteran officers who in the past have always been told to never, put a hose in a window, have had trouble finding interior stairwells and have backed out, found it on the exterior, had a quick knock, and then gone in and were successful. And so it's working for us in that manner, and people are paying attention to it, and they're thinking about it on the fire ground. And as far as containment and control, ventilation's kind of been the same way. We recently had a pretty good basement fire in regards to it was remote. It was a long stretch from the front door, and a lot of things came into play. When the science came out, one of the things we focused on was we always have different numbers depending on how many we have on our apparatus and if our ambulance is in quarters when we get kicked out on a working fire. And so we've practiced moving the line as quickly as possible if we can find the seat of the fire and it's not self-vented, with two to as many as 5 guys. And on that particular fire, it worked seamlessly. Because of the training, not one time did the nozzle have to call for more hose. We probably stretched over 100 feet into the house just because of the location of the fire. And with that being said, once we did find the seat of the fire and put it out, nobody was real quick to just start breaking every window and starting the fan. They waited for that attack team to call for that ventilation to ensure that they had the seat of the fire. So I think in that regard, that's kind of how we've used the science and the training so far. It's been a gradual thing, but it's been working pretty good for us, and we've had a lot of good feedback and comments from it.
Erich, Nick, Ricky, anybody jump in?
It's kind of interesting to think about for me because I came here from an environment that was very heavy on horizontal ventilation, and it was nothing to very quickly in the early stages of the fire basically have every window taken in the house as quickly as you could. And I mean, here it's just kind of the opposite. Honestly, they're a little faster to the roof than they are to the windows, kind of thing. And it's turned out that has been the right thing to do, I guess, in most situations. I can think of one fire in particular where we kind of strategically held off on anything until we could get a line on fire. But it does in many ways. I mean, everybody refers to it as new this and new that. I mean, a lot of this reminds me of the old acronyms, that I've heard since I first got a fire helmet about, vent for fire and vent for life. And the crux of that was acknowledging that in some cases you're strategically, ventilation has always been taught to be coordinated with the attack line and in coordination with the fire attack. And there were times when it was taught that, under the heading of vent for life, that if you do this ventilation now, it may have a negative effect on the fire. So you better have a really good reason, while you're doing it that's going to have some other impact. So in many ways, I kind of think that maybe we're just putting a new dress on this and talking about things that I feel anyway were very strongly talked about in the past, both as far as isolation goes and strategically ventilating.
Anybody? Ricky?
Yeah,
Eric?
I mean, put the 6-foot pike pole away. It's that's for hooking seals. It's not for breaking glass anymore. And guess what? You don't get to mule kick the door and be on YouTube. And you got to knock the door open. You got to control the door. You just can't. All the stuff Nick just said is that all the stuff's been happening for years. And the way the fires have changed. I can remember being a young fireman. And our big deal was we'd break every window out of the house as quickly as possible, but we would have no change on the fire. Well, now you break one window out, you're going to have a change on the fire. And we weren't figuring that out until Dan and Steve told us this is why the fires are changing, because you guys are doing this stuff. The stuff in the material in there is burning differently, and you can't use those same tactics. So we got to go back and, like Nick said, all this stuff's been there, but nobody told us what the difference was. Why the things have been changing and why fires are coming out and finding us as opposed to us going to find them. And then I think our lack of proficiency in engine company work, I think everybody thought it was cool to cut roofs and break glass and go for the gold medal, as Nick would say, rather than basing our fire ground on getting that hose line in service before it gets to the Dan and Steve's curve and putting it out. If we can't put that line in service that quickly, but now we got to wait for the second curve to be over with before we can go in there and put the fire out. So we got to get better. You taking Jason's classes or taking a Nick class or a Tony Keller class, we got to get back to worrying about good functioning, highly efficient engine companies.
And if I can piggyback right on it. No.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
As always, I change the names to protect the innocent a little bit here, but I've got a fire in my mind that I was involved in, and depending on what side of the fence you take, afterwards you might say, man, this was just the perfect fire for the hit it hard from the yard kind of thing or whatever. But what I kind of know from the other side of it is it only got to that point because an engine company couldn't make a stretch 12 to 15 feet inside of a building that was not complicated by any other extraneous circumstances. It was a fairly basic residential stretch. And why that is, it was a variety of factors. But what concerns me sometimes, and I'm just going to try and make sure, since this is national, that I say it the right way, is that I want to be careful about. There comes a point in my mind where you change what you're doing because you simply can't get good enough at it to do it reliably. So you alter your tactic because you can't get good at this tactic, the other way. And so we end up having to go over here. And I just want to continue to see as much focus put on getting good at regular firefighting stuff, kind of like Ricky was just saying, as I do feel like there is focus on, well, let's try something new. And I guess what I'm saying is here, the SEAL team can surgically go through an urban scenery and surgically extinguish threats. And if I'm not very good at that, I'd probably be better at dropping bombs on the buildings. And I just don't want to see the fire service move to dropping bombs rather than continuing to work at the basics that keep us surgical.
And that's a great analogy, because the reason that our military today can move through urban environments was out of necessity. And the reason we're moving some of our tactics, and yeah, we've known about air tracks, as Erich Roden taught me from James Braidwood in 1866, but we didn't understand how to control them. And I think what's neat is now it's being necessitated because we're no longer dealing with fuel-limited fires, we're dealing with ventilation-limited fires. And we're learning about high-pressure zones and low-pressure zones and how to create and control those environments to our advantage, which makes firefighting infinitely more effective, which is our ultimate goal, to become as efficient and effective as we possibly can, to save more lives and property, to be better at what we do. So it's a neat deal, and I'll let Erich talk a little bit more about training people downrange, because I'll tell you, if you ever had a chance to take Erich Roden's Urban Essentials class, just off the charts, great stuff. And by the way, a quick shameless plug, Fire engineering is also helped supporting the high-rise operations class next week down in Florida, where Erich will be speaking with our good friend Ray McCormick and a cadre of other Dave McGrail, just the greatest high-rise firefighters in the country. So if you want to take some great training, head down to Florida next week. Erich, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's been in a lot of fire departments' books that door control is a necessity, and it's something we've always done. It's when we've not done that or not done that component of the forcible entry operation or our search operation where things go to hell quick. So when we lose that, we see our bad situations and people getting jammed up at fires. So Nick brought up a very good point. I'll kind of go back to his his thesis that we have to be good at the basics, and that's where I'm not to sound cliche, where we get jammed up all the time. And if we can't start a line, if we can't get a stretch flake charge and place in an operation quickly, we don't need to progress past that point in anything else. RIT drills are great. Some of the other stuff that we drill on in the firehouse because it's easy and we can do it in quarters is great. But we need to be very, very proficient in our engine company operations. Our inside teams on the truck companies need to learn how to control the door effectively and stay oriented as well. And then also get on the radio when it's necessary to advise people when we don't have control of the door. If a window fails, if we're seeing an increase in heat in the fire department in the public hallway, etc. So these are the basics. They've always been the basics, and if we keep on that, and then that transcends into incorporating science. That's where the science meets the streets, and when we can kind of get a clear picture of how to incorporate this stuff and use it effectively, because it's all right, it's all correct.
I'll tell you, and
Bobby, one of the things that we've been doing or trying to do here is educate our people with the science, but also do exactly what Nick and everybody else is talking about, is have those basic skills. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about in my program at FDIC is taking it to the streets, back to the basics, taking it to the streets. One of the key things is, what are the company officers doing in the stations? Are they sitting in the recliners? Are they sitting or not doing anything? Or are there people out stretching hose lines, throwing ladders, practicing search and rescue, doing vent inter search? Really looking at what's going on with science, relating it to their environments and their districts. Because you're right, a lot of our folks don't see a lot of residential fires. They're probably seeing more commercial fires, depending on what district they're in. For me here in the Horry County, we go from 30 and 40-story high-rises to swamps and gators. So, it's just down the road from Nick up there in the big city of Columbia. But there's a lot, I think, that we need to focus on. I think these guys are hitting it when it comes down to being proficient at the basics. If you can't do that and you can't be aggressive with those, you're going to have a hard time doing anything, even hitting it hard from the yard. You're not going to be able to get a line over there. You're not even going to know when that you should be doing that. So I think a lot of it goes back to being, I guess, engaged a lot more in the company level training than what sometimes we see. And I know that's been a big push here for us, is going through sets and reps and getting folks really engaged.
That's outstanding. And I'm going to wrap up the kind of the flow path control conversation with a suggestion. I'll tell you, I got to see the Germans operate these fire curtains where they control flow paths by putting curtains up inside of the building at the front door on the interior to really control flow paths. We got Dr. Michael Reich coming to speak at FDIC this year from Germany, and I highly recommend, I hope all of us can get into his class. I know I'm going to sit through it. He's a brilliant guy, wrote a great article for us on fireengineering.com if you want to pull up Mike's stuff and take a read through it. But the class is phenomenal, and I think it might be, people are always saying, hey, what's the next thing? I think that's the next thing. So from the interior perspective, once we get into, say, isolating flow paths in high rises or commercials or McMansions, we'll I think we'll be deploying these curtains. I think it's going to take some time. And it's going to take some introspection, but I believe we're going to get there. I want to talk a little bit. We got some time. I want to hit this because I think it's important, and I think a lot of folks are asking about it on Twitter. I'm getting a boatload of Twitter deals here, but one of the things that has come up 4 or 5 times is hard from the yard. How to do hard from the yard correctly? Because if you look at the acronym, it says correctly, which means there's a right way to do hard from the yard and a wrong way. Resetting the fire hard from the yard, I don't care what you want to call it, but doing a transitional attack, and kudos to the guys from Colorado Springs who wrote the transitional attack article back in 2007, 2006, I think is when I first got it. They get very little credit in all this conversation, but they were one of the early guys to look at this tactically, and kudos to those guys, and great group of guys too, God bless them. So real quick, Erich, Nikki, I don't care who wants to jump off on this first, Rick, Jason, I got 7 of the best engine guys in the country right here. Talk to me about stream selection, location, access, what the flow path should look like before and when I'm resetting the fire from an exterior position.
Well, I'll jump in.
I was going to say I'm going to turn my 3 minutes over to Nick because I like having offense people. So, and I can't do that, so I'm turning my 3 minutes over to Nick to talk about this.
No, we got so go, man. Let's hear it.
Well, I mean, honestly, I am concerned. I am concerned that. Well, let me rewind just a step and say that I read a lot of things on the internet and talk to a lot of the people involved in this stuff, and it's become clear that you know, say for both the ISFSI perspective and the slicers thing and the NIST UL thing, there is what is said and there is what is heard, and they are not always the same thing. And there's been a couple places on the internet, you know, where people have pointed out that here's what was said, and then this guy or these people or whatever take it and transform it into this, and that's when the problems start or whatever. So fast forward to what I was going to say is I am worried that some people are taking some of this message and saying if there is ever a fire anywhere in any type of building and it is venting to the exterior, your first line should be stretched to that exterior opening all the time. And I know that is not what is being said, but I am very concerned that that is what is being heard very, very much over. I'll say for my part, you know, I kind of think that if the entrance to the primary fire area, if the fire is venting out of side alpha and the front door is on the side alpha, you're going to hit the fire as you go in towards the front door. With the engine companies I've experienced and that I've worked with that stretch attack lines very fast with precision, I believe that it is inefficient under most circumstances to stretch a line around the outside of any sizable building and then try and stretch an additional line and reposition it to go in and put the fire out. If I can take a team that is well practiced in stretching an attack line through, you know, the average building of whatever construction, you know, not only am I isolating, not only am I putting the fire out, but I am also already inside to begin to be in a position to effect a rescue of anybody who might be between the fire and the egress point, which is often where we find our victims. And I'm also in a point where I can get in there, finish up the fire, and get into the void spaces. You know, we've talked in our classes for a long time about do one thing to 100% rather than trying to do two things to 60 or 70%. And I've seen the videos on the internet of some guys that are going to try and stretch one line over here and then stretch another line over here, all with the same 4-person engine crew. And to be honest, it doesn't look like they could stretch one line with the 4-person engine crew very well, let alone 2. So, you know, that's where some of the struggle that I have is.
Okay,
I can tell you.
So let me give you a scenario then that you guys could work off of so we can get into the weeds. I want to get into the weeds a little about nozzle selection, stream type, application. So let me give you the layout. Let's take a Queen Vic. The fire is in the BC, so kitchen area, well seated. Let's say it's that room. Let's call that room fully involved. That room of origin fully involved. So you got your traditional, you know, narrow in the front, long to the back, Queen Vic, and then as you go down, the grade drops. So typical as they did it, so they could do the walkout cellar. So you've got street grade that's say, you know, at 0, and then you drop down to say 12 at the back on side B. So the window that you're looking at, if you're standing on the ground, is got an elevation of about 12 to 15 feet to the top of the window. And the bottom of the window is probably somewhere at about 8 to 10 feet. So that's a scenario that you got fire coming out that BC corner window, kitchen fire. If I'm going to, and I'm rolling up, and let's say I'm light staffed. So talk to me about what are we recommending folks to do? What nozzle selection, stream application, and let's get into the weeds a little bit.
I'd let Jason go with this one.
Yeah, I got two different departments. If I'm out in Sullivan, which is where my combination department is, I mean, me personally, I prefer a smoothbore nozzle for just obvious reasons. I get a lot of flow, especially on a volunteer limited staffing department. For me, it's that smoothbore is going to allow easier manipulation of that line. There's not as much reaction pressure from the nozzle, and quite honestly, they're more cost effective. But at Sullivan, that first line very likely is going to go to that BC corner and put a knock from the exterior, just for simple facts of limited staffing. We don't have somebody to be at the door. We don't have somebody maybe to make enough. If there's 4 or 5 corners or 3 corners, we may not have enough guys to make all those corners and make the move fast enough. And the same thing could happen at Florissant, depending on what's going on. Quite honestly, we don't have Queen Anne's in Florissant, not very many anyway. But if we had a fire similar to that in Florissant, let's say Friday or Saturday, I'm back on Saturday, and we've got resources in Ferguson. I may have to hit that fire from the BC corner from the exterior because of those resources. Now, if I've got 5 guys suited up, ready to go, like we had on that basement fire, I'm going to do a 360. I'm going to see what conditions I have. I'm going to have some what we like to call, and we've been training on here with our officers, is to have some tactical patience. Get a real good overall look at the building. It doesn't mean lollygag around and wait, but it means to get an overall look of conditions in the picture, what you have, and make a really good decision based on what you've got available to you and what you've got coming. And so for me, it could go either way, but I wouldn't hesitate to hit it from the exterior.
Good, and I'm going to bring Erich and Doug in here in a second, but I wanted to mention something real quickly here so it gets mentioned. A lot of misinterpretation, as Nick talked about earlier, is I've heard people saying, oh, you only hit it for 15 seconds. No, the reason we hit it for 15 seconds in the study was because that was a study. We were trying to get results that were based upon a consistent application rate, so we were comparing apples to apples down the line throughout the experiments. Hit it till you knock it down. If it's 15 seconds, great. If it's 55 seconds, great. Hit it till you knock it down. That's the point. Erich, you want to jump in, bro?
Well, I guess a couple things. It's true. I mean, you don't want to, half do it. Obviously, we're putting a line in the exterior because we can't get our hose line stretched in place via the primary means of egress. And I guess if I'll talk with my scenario where I do have a couple engine companies arriving back to back, trying to get first water on the fire. We kind of gauge it where if we can't get the hose line placed in advance via that stairs, then we're going to take care of that fire, and we need to, obviously, because the truck or the rescue is not going to be able to get in there and initiate a search. So doing that is definitely going to be very advantageous operationally, and it's still going to allow us to be aggressive and continue doing what we want to do. But we really have to be mindful of what kind of fire conditions we have, how many windows is it coming out of, and you'd be amazed on how little water it really takes to make that area tenable if we can't make that stairs. And I guess to further plug a video we'll be producing very shortly out of my town in with you all. We actually showed real time what a transitional attack, at least in an urban setting, should look like. And you're seeing the first driving engine, first driving truck. You're seeing the frantic mother with her child trapped in her room that is controlled. With a whole first floor fire, and you'll be amazed at how much fire you see, and how a lot of chiefs would have called that fire if they would have pulled up without kind of having that the commonsensical idea of what we can do with water right away. And the truck's working on the door. They take care of the fire very briefly, give it a quick knockdown. It's still visible fire. Door gets popped, and they go in. So. We've done the scenario not just in a lab, but in real time with a real acquired structure with real, modern, combustibles and furniture. So, it can be done regardless of your staff. You don't need 35 people coming on a fire. to initiate that. If you cannot get your hose line, stretch, flake, charged, and placed in operation by the primary means of egress being the stairs, you have to take care of the fire, period. And that's for every job.
I would agree. I would agree with what Erich just said at that last part there. At the end of the day, you got to get it done. If you can't do A, you got to do B, or if you can't do B, you got to do A. Either way, somebody's got to put the fire out. One thing that I will say has been discussed amongst a bunch of my friends is there has been a lot of, they've done some good studies lately, but what we haven't done is study, I guess, what we were doing or what we have been doing or what many places still are doing. Meaning, I would like to see a study done with a A-team engine company. I want, 4 top-notch engine guys to do what they did yesterday or whatever, to do what they do, and be studied under the same conditions that we've done these other studies. Because the implication of the current studies, or what people are, what it seems to be, is the assumption is, oh, well, what we've studied is better than what we were doing. But the problem is we haven't studied what we were doing. So how can we say A is better than B or B is better than A if we haven't studied both of them? If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why we decided to go with looking at this tactic first was just the phenomena of fire behavior. In other words, if you look at fire behavior, if you have if you have a fully involved room in the average structure, say 2,800 square foot, and you open up that front door, that's what we were looking at. So in other words, if you want to have a crew come in, the phenomena of that fire then coming to greet us, because remember, you've got your cool air gravity current flowing in low, you've got your heat, your energy coming out high. Well, as that fire gets fed more and more cool air, it grows and grows and grows to where that neutral plane just disappears, and you've just got all this energy coming at you, and eventually a flash of the second room or the third room. So that was kind of why we started there, or why Steve and Dan and Erich and the rest of us who've been involved in doing this for 15 years now, was because of that phenomena of crews going in through the A side door, coming in low like we were always taught, but then being either forced out or getting caught in flashovers and suffering catastrophic burns or dying. And then the whole flow path control came out of that as a secondary issue. But great point, and we could do that, and certainly that's something I'll suggest to the rest of the UL and
yeah, I mean.
But I think Nick and Jason, and Bobby, you just hit on it. Is that, you take Nick's tactics that we were doing the day before and the new stuff we're learning. You just said it. Not only do we have to get the hose line stretched, but as soon as you cross the threshold of the door, you as an engine company better be daggone prepared to flow water all the way to the seat of the fire, or you're gonna get it caught, just like you said, in that path. If you're just trying to crawl down that hallway and get to the room, and then open it up, you're setting yourself up for disaster.
Yeah, the point is, this doesn't happen at every fire. I can tell you in the last 3 years, we've done it one time. And with the amount of fires we get, we've only had to do it once because those were the conditions that were presented to us. And I agree really with everybody saying a lot of the same things, and it's going to be adaptable to how you operate. But for us, our primary tactic is still going in the front door in the large majority of our fires. And you're absolutely right, Ricky. That basement fire we had recently, we did not push up on top of the room and then to put fire out. We were able to make a lot, and do that.
Yeah, I mean, Larry Schultz, I think, the last piece, and I know we're getting close, is that Larry Schultz says it the best, is that people are trying to use slicers, dicers, the UL studies, and the NIST studies as a silver bullet to solve all our fireground problems. They think that we learned about these fires now, and that this is how we're going to solve them, is like horror from the yard, or hitting it from the outside. But there's so many other things that we have to concentrate on to make the fireground safer, not just those little pieces. So I mean, this isn't the silver bullet to solve all our fireground problems.
No, and I can tell you, as being a part of that team, it wasn't intended to be a silver bullet either.
Oh yeah,
unfortunately, it's been like Nick said. They hear it the way they hear it, interpret it the way they interpret it. But it should be if you're going to attack a fire from the exterior, here's some ways to do it, and that's really what it's built to
100%.
do.
I think Paul Simon said it best. People hear what they want to hear and disregard the rest, right? Wasn't that those of us old enough to remember Paul Simon?
Did Nick say something? What? Hey, you know I love you, brother.
There's always going to be folks that, what do they call them, low information voters or whatever, that just grab onto something and think that's the answer. Again, and I'll defend the folks from the Instructor Society. I'll defend the study. I'll defend Nick and everybody, the slicers, dicers, all of them. Nobody's saying that's the only way. Please don't take that. All they're saying is that this is another way. This is an option you could exercise given the right conditions.
Can we blame it on Honeywell for giving us such good PPE, or?
Jeff, you're going to enjoy this part of the conversation. I've actually had people tell me that our gear is too good.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah, I don't know if the definition of too good.
Yeah, you know what, Bobby? But the one thing I am noticing real quick is that you're seeing some of the best instructors in the country, and because we've had them in Florissant, we've been fortunate enough to bring them in, like Larry Schultz and Keller and the 25 to Survive guys, Ricky, and Bill Gustin, and all. I thought you'd like that, but some of the best instructors in the country are incorporating, even if they don't call it slicers or dicers or anything else, they're incorporating that there are options out there based on conditions, and it's not they're including different things that are appropriate based on the science, and even some that have differences with some of the information that's coming out in the tactics, they're still giving their students some of the foundational elements of what we're talking about here today, and I think that's important.
Well, I don't know, I don't know if Chief Halton if we need to get ready to wind down or whatever, but we had a very interesting conversation out in Denver, Danny Doyle and I, this past week at a class just about this kind of stuff, and it occurs to me, I'm glad to see the conversation is evolving, because the internet has made the fire service a very, very interesting place where everybody has an opinion that can be very quickly and widely broadcast, and it's sometimes in question what the what the check the resume factor is of the opinion, but it seems that some of this stuff has gotten very polarized, and it's gotten like almost confrontational on some stuff that's like, you're an idiot if you don't do this, and you're an idiot if you don't do that, on two polar opposite extremes. It's always this or it's always that, and there's like, it's like Ricky was saying, everybody wants to know, okay, well, what's the answer? What's the silver bullet? What should everybody do all the time? And there is no answer for that, but the polarization of it that it is beginning to form in some of the conversations gets a little concerning.
Yeah, and I think that the folks that are doing that, I've heard the terms, Kool-Aid drinkers and deniers, and it's out there. Fortunately, those are generally, and I don't want to categorize anybody, but the folks that are doing that are they're rabble rousers. They're trying to put a bee under somebody's bonnet. Everybody's got a right to their opinions, and everybody's got a different take on things, and that's great. I mean, that's what makes the American Fire Service so amazing. That's called being innovative, which is one of our foremost and most important of our four primary virtues. That's self-awareness, and innovation is number two, with self-awareness being number one. So, when you think about it, being innovative means having more than one arrow in your quiver. And so anybody who says it's got to be this way all the time or that way all the time clearly is due to fall, because it just can't be that way. You can't do anything the same way every time. It's just not in a dynamic, not in a complex dynamic environment where we do our work. And I agree exactly with what Nick is saying. It's not a silver, and God bless the people who are coming up with these theories. They are not saying it's the silver bullet. It's other people with questionable resumes, as Nick so eloquently put it, who are doing that, not the people who are developing the theories. So whether it's Ray McCormick or it's Steve Kerber or it's whoever, they're all great people. So I'll leave it there. Hey, we do have to. Anybody got some final thoughts before we wrap it up? Any guys want to throw anything out there about what's going on? I know, Erich, you're going to be at the High Rise Symposium next week. You want to throw out a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's being held in Pensacola, Florida, the High Rise Operations Conference. It's a great gathering of practitioners, which is probably one of the best ways I'll put it. If you see the lineup of instructors and students there, you'll see it's just a great event to go to. So I'm very happy to be representing Penwell Fire Engineering and Fire Rescue at that event.
We'll be doing a live Google Hangout from there next week. Next Wednesday, the Google Hangout's going to be partially based at that conference.
Very good. Yep. So you look for us there. We'll have a whole crowd of good people to talk to and ask questions from. And but I guess in closing. So I guess in closing, again, thank you to Honeywell and UL for the scholarship program. Like I said, I can't stress what a great program that is for anyone that's been going to FDIC for a while. It's just an amazing gift to the fire service. And also congratulations to Jason on his promotion. They say you always promote out of the jobs you love the most, but I'll tell you what, being a battalion chief is the best job I've had yet. So congratulations and best of luck.
Guys, anybody else want some closing thoughts?
Yeah, we got Tony Kelleher and Larry Schultz will be doing a Google Hangout with you on December 10th about attitudes in the fire service. And then thank you to Fire Engineering. Larry Schultz and I will be doing a webinar on red flags on the fireground, a precursor for FDIC. Once again, thank you to Chief Halton, Erich Roden, and Penwell and Fire Engineering for allowing us to do that. We're honored. So.
Thank you.
Hey, Bobby.
Doug, why don't you give a pitch to the classes from the IFSI?
The principles of modern fire attack will be going around, working with the state training directors. A good chance to get this information firsthand and hear what it's not saying and what it truly is saying.
And at
so
FDIC.
That'll be yeah. We're going to be at FDIC, and just a special thanks to you and Erich both and your team as we're moving the company officer over to the fire officer. So that'll launch soon in the EMS blogs and the fire rescue and all. So really excited about that too. And again, thank you Honeywell for FDIC sponsorships and all that you're doing for us. If you've never been to FDIC, folks, you need to go. It's the best place to get your training. It's where the instructors are, and I can promise you that if you haven't learned something by the time you left there, you will faint it.
Jason, Frank, you want anything else?
Yeah, Chief, thank you again for having me. One of the things I wanted to bring up with regard to the bailout class at FDIC, on our website over at Engine House Training, we've been getting a lot of requests about equipment, and I just want to clarify, firefighters can come with just their regular PPE. They don't need bailout equipment, harnesses, like we use the spider harness from Honeywell. Again, we're going to be able to provide all of that with the help of FDIC, obviously, to give them the full experience and to try this equipment and see what's available out there as part of the class. Because most people come into a bailout class are shopping. They're looking for what they want to do at their department. So we want to give them plenty of options that they can take back.
Outstanding. Well, one other conference to plug real quick. If you're up in the Nebraska area, remember Les Lukert is coming up this February 6th through the 8th. Great conference. Jason and I and Erich, and we've all taught there from time to time. If you haven't been up to that conference, Sonny O'Connor and my buddies up there do an amazing job of putting that together. That's the Les Lukert Conference, February 6th through 8th. Another great place to get training. I'm sorry, Jason, did I cut you off?
I was just going to say thanks to Honeywell for sponsoring the Hangout today and for the 25 scholarships, and thanks to all of you for allowing me to sit here and talk today on an afternoon about fire stuff. It's great. And have a happy Thanksgiving to all of you.
Hey, and I'll tell you, the Honeywell scholarship is so easy. All you got to do is take your cell phone, boom, put it on video, do a quick video about someone. You don't even have to write. You just have to submit a quick video about someone you want to attend FDIC. They could be someone who's done something heroic. They could be someone who's done some great training. They could just be an up-and-coming, hard-charging firefighter that you think would get a world of good out of attending. Or they could be a great instructor that you know is going to come back and bring back tons of great instruction to your organization. So here's a chance for you to do something. We talk about Thanksgiving. The most important thing about Thanksgiving is having an attitude of gratitude. And we're real grateful to our friends at Honeywell and UL for doing this program. But here's a chance for you to be grateful to someone in your life and to do something really neat for them and get them to FDIC. And you know, you just don't miss this opportunity and to support a great organization, to get your friends or somebody in your department, an opportunity to attend the world's greatest fire service training conference. And I'm not saying that because I'm associated with it. I do a very minor role there. But this is a conference that's 87 years old. Over 35,000 firefighters are going to be attending it this year. Over 200 classrooms, 80 workshops, 21 hands-on training classes with over 590 of the world's best instructors. Any instructor in the world today of any stature is going to be there. Over 20 countries, we have instructors coming internationally from 20 different nations. So you're talking about people like Stefan Svensson and Lars Angersand and people from Ireland, Spain, Sweden, Germany. They're all teaching there. So here's a chance to meet with folks nationally, internationally, create relationships that'll last a lifetime. I can't tell you what an experience it is. And we couldn't do it without guys like Jeff Morris. So, I'm grateful in my life for guys like Jeff Morris that looked at FDIC, said, what can we do to help support it, not just as a company, but what can we do that would go above and beyond. And when I said sponsor a couple of guys and gals to come to it, I thought Jeff would sponsor 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. Jeff said, we're going to do 25. And
that's because he saw Dan and Doug's 25 Survive plan.
Exactly.
I was wondering how you're going to get that in there.
Hey, I just got my brand new Morning Pride gear. I'm a happy man.
Hey, thank you. And Bobby, I want to thank you and on the whole team here, and again, all of you that train the fire service. I mean, what you do is critical. We provide the protective clothing, but the elements that you guys do is even more important. And so, again, we want to thank you. We want to thank Penwell for putting this all together. It's a scholarship, and again, this is the first year. We want it to grow. Like you said, it's easy. Just take a quick video, go to fdic.com/scholarship and post that. Send it in to us. We're anxious to award these. It's going to be a really fun time this year at the FDIC. So again, thanks to everyone on this call, and we appreciate all the support from Honeywell and Morning Pride.
Super simple, guys. FDIC.com. Click on that Honeywell scholarship banner on the side. Everything's right there for you. Take you 5 minutes. You could change somebody's life. So, hey, remember next week's Google Hangout, we'll have Frank Ritchie, PJ Norwood, Ray McCormick, Erich Roden. I'm blanking on Kirk Isaacson, Dave McGrail. We're going to have a huge cadre of folks, special 2-hour Humpday Hangout, hopefully sponsored by our friends at Honeywell. I'm just kidding you. Giving you a hard, Jeff.
We can't forget our friends at Underwriter Laboratory too.
God bless them. God bless them. Chris Hasbrook, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Hey, listen, thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. We hope there was something good for you here. Remember, there's a lot of ways to fight fire, but the most important thing is to remember, always, my friends, please be careful out there, and happy Thanksgiving.